You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS.
Welcome to a special NACS Show episode of Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Leonard.
And Stephanie Sikorsky.
And today what we want to do is talk about disruption. We had a great keynote presentation today, Rahim Boudwani and Chip Conley. Chip, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So we want to talk about disruption. That was the key focus of what you're talking about, what you talked about today. Disruption's a new word, but it's not really a new thing, is it?
Yeah, I think, the idea of disruption has been there forever. It's, when a competitor comes along and changes the business model, that's happened forever. Where it's become, I think, a more household word, at least in the business households of the world, is around technology. Technology allows disruption to happen faster and more scalable, such that a disruption that includes technology could actually affect you much faster, as evidenced by Borders and Amazon, or the taxi cab industry and Uber or Lyft. So I think that's why disruption probably is perceived as more risky today than it was 20 years ago when technology was not so pervasive.
You mentioned about disruption taking place faster and quicker. Do you think that this is a case where disruption, or the word the way it's interpreted now, could be eliminated and it just becomes business as usual?
Yes, I think that's a great point. I think disruption as we know it will be normal for the future, and therefore what it means is that industries and companies need to be more open to innovating and changing and looking outside sort of their core business, how they've always done things and how their competitors have done things, because quite often the competitive disruption that happens from a competitor you weren't even expecting, and usually a pioneer who is not from the industry.
Yeah.
And you had also talked about how the hospitality industry really grew after post-World War II, where vets came home, there was more travel, highway system, and that disrupted everything. That led to the suburbs, that led to the growth of the convenience store industry. And so sometimes it's not really the thing, but the thing that causes the thing that causes the other thing.
That's right. And I used in the presentation, I said I'm using Uber and Lyft a lot more today than I used to, which means I'm not driving my car as much as I used to, which means I'm actually not filling it up as much as I used to, which means I'm not using convenience stores as much as I'm used to. Plus, if I'm taking Uber and Lyft places and it's point to point, I'm not doing errands necessarily that way. And so it means I don't do that sort of like, I'm going to drop in and get, a pack of gum. And so so there are influences, there are disruptive influences that are not your competitor. It could be the government, it could be lifestyle changes, etc.
I think something interesting about that, and I'm a frequent Uber driver. Rider.
They're not paying you enough.
That's it. Yeah, on the side, by the way. No, but when I'm in the vehicle, my head is often down. So you talked about just going point to point and not stopping in, but I think also interesting, and from the marketing standpoint, which is where my interest is there's missed opportunities to even see what's around you, because your head is down and you're engaged in so many other activities, whether it's following your ride along with that, or checking out work or something else.
Yeah, that's true. And certainly the volitional control of saying, I'm going to go do this now, which is what convenience stores often are. It's not, you sort of drive by, you aren't even sure, you know you're going to get one thing, but you end up getting four things, because once you actually are inside, you realize, I'm thirsty too. And I haven't been sleeping very well, so maybe I'll get some, Advil PM. So the add-ons become part of it, and so not only do you miss all of that, and I think that's that between that and then there's the competitive disruptors like Amazon that are also on the sort of the horizon as waves that we need to keep an eye on.
Well, and that was one thing that you talked about in your discussion, were sort of the three waves, if you will, to watch out for. So can you kind of walk us through that again?
Sure. The three waves relate to innovation, and they relate to pretty much any industry. And there's usually some foreshadowing as the first rule of innovation is that there is some semblance of signs. There's breadcrumbs, if you want to call them those, that can actually help you understand that the table has been set for a disruption to occur. You were talking, Jeff, about the President Eisenhower creating an interstate highway system. Well, that made sense such that actually set the table for convenience stores and for Holiday Inns to to pop up on the landscape. So in the case of Airbnb, where I've been for 4.5 years helping the founders grow the company, it was the idea that boutique hotels helped people break the shackles of saying, I'll stay at Holiday Inn next time. Well, no, actually, I want more of an experience, something that's more localized. And I'm willing to accept a higher standard deviation of quality because I know I might have my best or my worst experience at a boutique hotel. Well, same thing with Airbnb or with home sharing. So so that's that's the first one. The second one is there's an underlying human need that is not being met by the current establishment. And that's where the current establishment has to take their blinders off to understand what isn't being satisfied. And if you don't know that what's being satisfied, you can't actually serve that need or create that product. And that's why we tend to see pioneers who tend to see it more so than the establishment. And then there's the third rule of innovation, which is if it is more than just a wave that sort of gets small, it doesn't get bigger, but it's a fad. If it's a fad versus a trend is something that the establishment will jump on that wave, and if it's a fad, it sort of peters out, and you don't see the establishment jump on it. The key is, from the establishment perspective, when do they figure that out? And in the case of home sharing, it was Hyatt making an investment in a home sharing company, and Wyndham doing the same, and then Accor doing the same. That really sort of said, okay, the establishment is now saying home sharing is here to stay. We want to be part of this. How do we? And Airbnb is too expensive to buy at this point. How can we be part of this new trend? So I think with convenience stores, I mean, the number one thing I think that convenience stores need to figure out is this question of technology, and just the idea that Amazon Go is going to create a whole new premise about what a convenience store is, because you can actually go in, the technology is such that you have a barcode and you go in, you take your things with you, and then you leave. You don't stand in a line. And actually, probably one of the negative things in a convenience store experience is that line. And so, but that's not a simple technology today. It will probably be a very simple technology 5 or 10 years from now. But in the process of going from today to then, someone's going to become the market leader, and then everybody else will be me too. The good news with convenience stores is they're so disparate and spread out that it's not like Borders Bookstore, which got Amazon disrupted them, and Borders pretty much went out of business pretty quickly. I think convenience stores don't have that same risk, partly because there's just such a variety of them. There's so many on the landscape that people won't expect overnight for them all to be technology enabled. But I think what it does mean, though, is as we become more high tech in convenience stores, it prompts us to be even more high touch in terms of the service approach, because it does mean that you probably will have less service staff, just because you won't need it as much. But frankly, if it's a convenience store that has a binary of like it's either one person or 0 people, what do you do? I mean, generally you probably still have someone there. If you still have someone there, that person can actually be more gracious, helping people find things that they're not finding, and just being more friendly, and knowing here comes Ethel and George, who come 3 times a week, and I know they want the following things, and so I'm gonna they called me in advance and said they're coming, and I already have it, all boxed up for them. So I think there's an element of service that in convenience stores that actually could really step more and more in the direction of hospitality.
And I loved what you were talking about with community and hospitality and technology and how it all ties together, and how typically hotels have about 5%. They do surveys. You get that survey, whatever you are, whether it's a rental car, traditional industries, about a 5% survey response. Right. And then you really don't hear anything about that. There's no 5 stars, 3.5 stars, 4.95. Things like that. Yes, that's. But with new technology, Airbnb, some of these other things, Yelp, it's about a 75%
It's
response.
peer-to-peer. So we've moved in a direction where people are expecting to have instantaneous ability to give feedback, and then through Twitter get responded to if something's going wrong. and they're expecting that their feedback is actually going to be meaningful such that things will change. And I think part of the reason that most people don't fill out the guest satisfaction forms in hotels is, number one, that they're sort of really, the questions that are asked are relatively old school. And, so people don't think that they should spend the time on it, and they don't necessarily think that the hotel company is going to do anything with it.
Well, I think you mentioned a few different things there. One is the ease of completing, and I've stayed with Airbnb and also with Uber and completely agree, just to be able to tap and you're done and the response is in there. And then it also, importantly, I think a lot of times you're right, we fill out these surveys and nothing seems to move, or if it is moving, it's not moving fast enough. And
it's not obvious to us.
Right. And so with these other companies, what they've done a great job at doing, and where I think convenience stores, as you're saying, can do the same, is to look for those opportunities to innovate and innovate fast and communicate to those that provided feedback.
Well, think about this. The guests, I don't know how the hotel industry can figure this out, and I'm not sure how convenience stores would do this, but when you're a guest in a home share experience at Airbnb and you fill out your review, it shows up on the website. I mean, it's right there, and you know that the scores for that particular home and listing are influenced by what you've done. We don't have that kind of instant gratification or that sense of like, okay, when we actually give feedback.
Very transparent.
Yeah, it's transparent, and it's just not even clear that it's going to go anywhere. So I think technology, I think just keep an eye on Amazon. That's what I would say. Amazon wants to disrupt the world. They they've disrupted a lot of industries, and they are making the commitment they made to buy Whole Foods Markets is just one more example of that. The Alexa product, it seems like it's just sort of a fun little novelty, but you know what? As they get their drones and their droids working, which will probably in the next 5 years, in a more mass way, you could, at home, sitting while you're watching the TV, just say, you know what? I want a 6-pack of Miller Lite, delivered soon, and literally Alexa will send that to the drone, and the drone will pick it up and it fly it to your house, and halfway through the first quarter you've got a 6-pack of Miller Lite that you didn't have to go to the local convenience store to actually pick up. That is not in the far too distant future, and it seems bizarre, but so did ATMs when banks created them. Like, my grandfather couldn't even imagine why anybody would want to go to a machine and have money come out that way. People won't. My grandpa said, people don't want that. And I think what we see a lot, and I said this in my talk, is industries and companies that get disrupted tend to be more focused on people don't want fill in the blank, as opposed to people want fill in the blank. So companies that actually are sort of entrenched get very focused on, well, people want this, but they get very focused on, like, sort of territorially saying, people don't want that, or that, and we don't want to worry about that. And in fact, they're often wrong.
So when it comes to trends, I think most people say, well, I don't have time for that. Now, it's the wrong thing to say in the convenience store industry because we're all about time, but I don't have time to track all these trends and do all this and figure it. So, like, think, for example, pet rocks. Mm-hmm. Pet rocks in the 70s, big deal.
Here we go, a throwback.
Yeah. I'll explain it another time. But anyway, the first reaction, pet rocks, people are selling a lot of rocks, so we should buy a quarry, right? But that's not really the answer.
Well, that was a fad. That was not a trend.
So how do you determine what's the difference between a fad and a trend?
This is why I use surfing as the metaphor, being able to see and surf a disruption. There's a lot of elements for. I'm not going to beat the surfing metaphor to a pulp here, but I will say that an expert surfer can be sitting next to me on their board, and I'm 56, almost turning 57, and learning how to surf at this age. That expert surfer can look out at the horizon at what's coming and see it so much better than I can. So taking that idea and applying it, you have to look at what are the things that are clearly indicators that customer preferences in general are changing. And I think that technology, how people interact with their technology, is one of them. So for example, I think the idea that ATMs are so prevalent today means that people have a real comfort with the idea of working with a machine, that as long as they think the machine's accurate and going to be, not going to rip them off, to actually work with a machine rather than a person. So I think that means that, in a convenience store environment, being able to just know that you can get in and out, which is the ultimate convenience, and it's machine enabled, is absolutely part of the future. Are there things that a local convenience store owner can do? Yes. A local convenience store owner can know what are the tastes of people in their community better than Amazon Go can. Now, Amazon Go could figure it out based upon, just great ability to track what's being sold, and then have that in each of their different stores. But there's the subtleties of what you're not selling in the store, what Amazon Go is not selling in the store, because they don't have crawfish in Seattle, but in New Orleans, the store there wants crawfish. But if Amazon Go doesn't even have crawfish as something to sell there, they don't even know that they're missing it. So I think that the key is for local convenience stores is to actually get really smart at what is it that that's localized and personalized, that is the thing that's a differentiator.
Well, I think that's important, and you also talked in your speech about doing things that make someone happy. I would think if you understand your customers better than Amazon or others, and you can show that, going back to the discussion of ratings and everything else, they're happy, you're happy,
Yeah.
Your bottom line is happy.
Yeah, I think the thing that I love about hospitality and service is that if we do our jobs well, we make people happy. If you're a divorce attorney, it's not always that way in terms of you're a litigator, or there's a lot of other things. Like doing your job well sometimes means making people unhappy. In this case, whether it's convenience stores or hotels or home sharing, you do your job well, you feel good about what you're doing. And so convenience stores do that. I think one of the challenges, and this is one of the challenges with a labor shortage that's growing, is how do you give people a sense of meaning and recognition in the work that they're doing? They're getting paid their hourly rate, but for some people, if that's all you're offering, that means you're a commodity. And the moment someone else pays them 3% more, they may leave unless they have some allegiance to you, they feel somewhat recognized. Generally, it's a lonely job because there's not a lot of other people to actually fraternize with, so there's not a real community of other employees. So it means it's really reliant upon them feeling like they're appreciated, they're being developed, and that they would much rather stay with you for the 3% less that you're paying, or you match whatever that is,
right,
and they don't leave. And the idea of turnover is expensive. It's so expensive in so many ways, both how you go out and find new people, but then how you have to train them, and then they turn over because 50% of them don't last more than 2 or 3 months because they aren't very good at what they're doing. This is the tendency in very low wage retail. It's a very difficult business, and when you can actually help people do their jobs better and then get clarity that they're actually doing their jobs well, it is such a way. It's a great way to have a competitive advantage.
And I would imagine community fits in there. Are you doing something more than selling this snack, this drink?
Yeah.
But you're also doing something in the community. That's also, I would imagine.
No doubt. When in my hotel company, one of the things that we focused on was giving each of our hotels, and you could potentially do this with your stores, the ability to actually say, how should we use our philanthropic dollars? And so if the staff of a hotel could say, well, we're going to actually give our dollars as a company for that particular hotel to this particular charity, then you feel like, wow, you have a little bit more of a sense of your fingerprints are on the philanthropy. So I think, there's no doubt people want to feel pride in where they work, and they want to feel like their business is a positive for the community, not a negative.
Well, thank you very much, Chip. We really appreciate this. The trade show is open for the next 3 days, and one of the things we always say is bring comfortable shoes. Before we get to that, I will say I am totally out of my league with the shoe game today with what I see both of you having on. Maybe we'll have to take a picture of that, and I'm basically in Crocs.
Yeah.
But it's a busy show floor, and as you said, the key thing to not being disrupted is to being engaged and being here at the NAC show. And we really appreciate your message today. It resonates with everybody in that room. and it resonates with everybody on that show floor. So thank you very much for joining us today, Chip.
Yes, it's been great to be here, and keep doing the great work you're doing.
And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
You've been listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by Nax. For more information, go to naxonline.com.